Hello, I am going to read this declaration, which is the paperwork that got us to have the hearing to try to force former Secretary of State Kate Brown, who's now the Governor Kate Brown in Oregon, to follow current election laws, which dictated that she should destroy all leftover unused ballots promptly on election night after 8 o'clock on election night. And the reason that the state legislature established that law when they were putting in the vote by mail system, it's all vote by mail. There's no polling places in Oregon. You get your ballot in the mail, along with your cats, your dogs, people that used to live there. The one for your maiden name if you were a woman. All sorts of fictional things. You can get as many ballots as you wanted mailed to you because there's no verification. It's all vote by mail fraud. That's my opinion. That's part of why I left Oregon. So before I left Oregon, I tried to expose it and I tried to force them to allow us to have fair elections. And I gathered evidence when I was managing Delia Lopez's 2010 campaign to run against Earl Blumenauer in downtown Portland. I told her I'd run her campaign under one condition. No matter how badly she lost, she had to agree to a recount because I wanted to look at those ballots because it just was too fishy beyond belief. Every year, this guy, Earl Blumenauer, never even campaigns. Matter of fact, he was planning on going on vacation to Asia during the 2010 election when I was managing Delia Lopez's campaign. We had tons of people. She was advertising on Spanish radio. Tons of people in the Spanish community, which was rather large in that area, call her up as she gave out her cell phone number and in tears after the election saying that everybody they knew had voted for her and they don't understand why she lost. So we had a recount. We had the recount. This is a lot of what is declared in this document. This is the proof that I gathered in order to try 2 years later in 2012 to force Kate Brown to do her job and destroy the leftover unused ballots so they wouldn't have blank ballots to fill out after the fact and give all the elections to the Democrats, which they were obviously allowed to do. In any case, here it is. It's Lisa Michaels. I'm the plaintiff. Lisa Michaels, Janice Dysinger, Delia Lopez, and John Payne. Relators, petitioners, and plaintiffs versus Kate Brown in her official capacity as Oregon Secretary of State. Tim Scott in his official capacity as Multnomah County Director of Elections. Defendants. This is my declaration of Lisa Michaels. Lisa Michaels declares, I am a resident of Washington County, Oregon, and I'm registered to vote in that county. In 2010, I was the campaign manager for Delia Lopez, who was the Republican congressional nominee for District 3. In my capacity as a campaign manager, I was responsible for interactions with Multnomah County Elections Department. Experience during a 2010 recount in Multnomah County. Reviewing the results following the November 7, 2010 election, or Delia Lopez, we became suspicious because of extraordinarily low totals in predominantly Hispanic districts. On Thursday, December 2nd, 2010, at approximately 1 p.m., Delia Lopez filed for the recount of 6 selected precincts in Multnomah County. When we visited the elections office to file for the recount that day, we also learned more about how Multnomah County stores ballots. The county refers to the 2 ballots that have been filled out by voters as live ballots and sorts them by precinct. We asked photographer James Vaughn to photograph the ballot boxes containing the live ballots for the 6 precincts we selected. Election worker Eric Sample removed these precinct boxes from their secure red room, where all the live ballots were counted and stored, and placed them on a cart so that they could be photographed. Attached as Exhibit 1 are photographs of these ballot boxes, taken on December 2nd, 2010. The ballot boxes are supposed to be sealed with white sticker labels. Printed on these labels are blank lines for recording the names of the people who sealed the boxes and for the signature of the election official. However, none of these labels had been signed and dated, offering no defining characteristics. Significantly, the red room also contains more boxes of blank white precinct box sealing stickers. Attached as Exhibit 2 is a photograph of these boxes in the red room. So essentially, I'm just going to deviate from the document right now and just tell you that these, because I'm not showing the pictures of the ballot boxes. These ballot boxes, they just had a ton of these stickers, so they just pull one out and put it on there. And since they didn't sign it or have any markings on it, if somebody wanted to go in after they knew which precincts we were recounting, because we were only recounting 6 of them, and she had all these leftover unused ballots, simply pull out the right ballot style, fill it out for the Democrats, put it in the box, and then reseal it with one of these many other white stickers, since none of them were already signed or anything like that. Then, going back to the document, we attempted to avoid any possibility that the boxes would be tampered with by asking to submit 6 like-sized, substitute 6 life-sized, like-sized, learning to speak, it's a slow process, sorry. We attempted to avoid the possibility that the boxes would be tampered with by asking to substitute 6 like-sized precincts the day before the boxes were to be opened. Because the boxes were already sorted by precinct, it should have been a simple matter to simply bring out the different boxes requested. Mr. Sample initially offered no objection to this procedure. However, he subsequently informed us that Mr. Stephen Trout, the Director of Elections for the state of Oregon, had refused to allow any such substitution of boxes. When the boxes we had originally requested were opened on December 7th, 2010, the number of ballots matched the machine count. While the recount was going on in the blue room, supervised by the candidate and other volunteers, Mr. Sample gave me and Mr. Vaughn a tour of the facilities. He showed us where the ballots had been ballots from previous elections were stored, and as we were walking near the loading dock, we noticed a number of white shipping boxes, some opened, some sealed, with boxes spilling out of them. They appeared to have been rummaged through. We walked over to inspect the ballots and determined that they were ballots from this election. A video I posted concerning this process is posted, and then I've got the code for the video, which I can show or let you see. Attached as Exhibit 3 is a photograph of these boxes showing Mr. Vaughn holding up one of the ballots. Mr. Sample advised us that the ballots were waiting to be shredded by the county's contractor, AccuShred Northwest. He told us that they had kept the ballots on hand in order to duplicate ballots that the machine would not read. In 2010, there were only 1,500 such ballots out of the whole 287,000 ballots cast. There is no reason for this number of defective ballots. There's no reason that this number of defective ballots could not be counted by hand, if indeed they should be counted at all. Shortly after the recount, we learned of the existence of ORS 254483. Which we understand requires Multnomah County elections to destroy all unused ballots immediately after 8 p.m. on election night. We contacted AccuShred Northwest and learned that on December 3rd, their truck had arrived to shred unused ballots pursuant to the previous arrangement with the county. But that upon the truck's arrival, they were told by the county elections office officials not to shred the ballots. Attached as Exhibit 3A is an email exchange between Janice Dysinger and the general manager of AccuShred Northwest, reflecting this information. More specifically, we were told they would have to reschedule a shredding because of the recount. That's key. Because of the recount. Why couldn't they just shred them? They're the leftover unused ballots. They weren't to be cast. They weren't shredded because she needed to go and grab the right ballot types. There's thousands of them to match up with the precincts, the 6 precincts that we picked. Clearly. We know of no reason that the county could not contract with AccuShredder Northwest or some other contractor to schedule its shredding truck to arrive at or about 8 p.m. on election night in order to receive and destroy the blank ballots. Security of blank ballots and the curious role of the ballot printer's agent. Now we're going to talk about another aspect of this little voter fraud system that they have. That was a diversion from the document. Back to the document on number 13. We understand that there would be a delay. We understood that there would be a delay of several days after requesting the partial recount before the ballots were actually counted. We were concerned about the security of the ballots during this time before the boxes would be unsealed in our presence. After the recount, we made public record demands to acquire the security room logs from Multnomah County Alarms Division of Multnomah County, which maintains records of a security system designed to record access to secured rooms in the Multnomah County Elections Department. Attached as Exhibit 4 are excerpts from the material produced by Multnomah County Alarms in response to our request, pages 851 through 867. Its records accessed by cardholders to secure rooms at the elections department. As far as we can tell from the system records produced to us, the system does not record entries to rooms on the second floor room where the blank ballots are kept in the weeks leading up to the election, nor does it appear actually to record all entries to the area in the basement where the blank ballots are moved after the election. To illustrate the operations, these records, we focused on the movement of Miss Vicki Polk, who served as county clerk of Multnomah County for many years under the name Vicki K. Irvin, before retiring to work for Ryder Graphics. Ryder Graphics is exclusively authorized to print all ballots for Multnomah County and is the county's certified contractor to service the county's ES&S voting machines. I was told by Mr. Tim Scott, who is Multnomah County clerk, that Miss Polk, while a full-time employee of Ryder Graphics, also possesses some sort of status in the nature of a part-time employee for the Secretary of State. So she's working both for the printing company and for the Secretary of State, and she's supposed to make sure the printing machines are working and maintain them and supply the ballots that go into the printing machine. Isn't that a cozy deal? And she used to be she's helped put this whole vote by mail fraud system in with Kitsopper back in the day when she was the head of Multnomah County, which is the downtown Portland County elections we're talking about. And by this means enjoys access to all Oregon vote counting facilities with ES&S voting machines. And ES&S voting machines out of Omaha, Nebraska is in every county, was at the time of this writing of this lawsuit, was in every county in Oregon except for 2 or 3. The security system records each time a person's badge is used to enter one of the rooms. The records reflect the following use of Miss Polk's badge on December 3rd. That was the day after this is the day she canceled. She's the one who called up and canceled them from coming in and shredding the ballots, the unused ballots. So she goes in there at 8:51 and to the lobby. She checks into the place. Then she goes to the purple room, which is where they've got a lot of other ballots or something. And then she goes into the front bay. Then she goes into the red room. The red room's key. That's where all the live ballots are that have been voted and counted and sorted. She goes in there, and then she goes into the sage room, which is, I think, the room that has the stickers in it. Then she goes into the sage room, and then the entry bay. She leaves. And then she goes into the blue room, which is this giant room where we had the recount, where she could lay out all the ballots and she could get the right ballot types and fill them out and make sure they match up with the box. Then she goes into the front hall, and then she leaves. So she's there from 8:51 until around 12:20 doing all her chicanery, in my opinion. Can't prove it because we don't have video of her doing it, but it sure looks fishy. The record also reflects that Ms. Polk returned the day of the recount on December 7th. And then on December 7th, she came in at 7:45 a.m. She goes in the lobby, in the bay, in the blue room. She goes back in the red room where the live ballots are at 8:31. Okay? She didn't go into the blue room. She goes right back into the blue room where she probably had a lot of the ballots all done. And then she goes back into the bay hall. She's in the blue room for a long time. She didn't go out. She goes back into the bay hall at 10:45. Blue room again. She's just out for a second, then goes back into the blue room, probably grabs something else, then goes back into the bay hall at 45, then right back into the blue room. She spends a lot of time in the blue room where she's sorting where our recount's going to be. And then she's in there until 1 o'clock, looks like. No, she doesn't leave there until like 1:23. But she goes back in. So she just comes out for a second, goes back in. And then she goes in the front hall and leaves at 1:26. So she's there from 7:45 in the morning, the day of the recount, to 1:26. Attached as Exhibit 5 is a map of the areas. The purple room typically contains ballots that were voted incorrectly and was the room used to do signature verification. The sage room contains office supplies. The red room is the room where where the voting machines are kept. The blue room is a very large room extending off the edge of Exhibit 5, where the ballots counted and the election boards sort through sometimes enhanced ballots. The recount was ultimately conducted in this room. We are unaware of any explanation that would account for Ms. Polk's activities at the elections office the day after we requested the recount, nor are we aware of any explanation that would account for Ms. Polk's activities on the day of the recount. The machines are not used in the recount, and she's just totally in charge of the machines because she works for the company that maintains them. So she has no reason to be in there except in order to rig the election, the recount. The Post-Recount Public Records Act request. On December 17th, so this is after the recount, we submitted a Public Records Act request, a true copy of which is attached hereto in Exhibit 6. Intended to review whether and to what extent the county had accounted for whatever whereabouts and use of the blank ballots. Multnomah County Elections Department produced documents to respond to this request and with their handwritten notations indicating which documents were responsive to the 7 numbered questions in the request. Additional handwriting on the exhibit, however, is mine. In response to the request, the department produced materials excerpts which are attached in Exhibit 7, showing 188 voters were registered to vote in the election. The county ordered 466,430 ballots. So, slightly less than 60 more ballots, like 58,000 ballots more than they had. They had registered voters. That's a little much. The county mailed 426,750 ballots. So you subtract, this is the ballots that mailed out. These are all the ones voted. and additional 3,989 ballots were handed over the counter. So when people come in and they say they lost their ballots, that's how many came in over the ballots. But initially, this is the pool that they pull from. They pull that number, that number. We did not receive any explanation we regarded as adequate concerning why the county was mailing out so many more ballots than voters. When the county was unable to provide information concerning the remaining number of blank ballots, we were permitted to count them and found some 32,677 blank ballots were left. We attempted to audit the ballot totals by adding up the total number of ballots that had been distributed and were retained at the departments as follows. Okay, blank ballots in the boxes, 32,000. Ballots mailed out, 426,750. Ballots handed out over the counter, 3,989. Blank ballot test ballots, 5,126. Marked test ballots, 1,177. Duplicate ballots, 1,520. Total 471,239. Well, wait a minute. They only ordered 466,430. So that means that they ordered some 5,000 more ballots that are unaccounted for, that they charged them for. So that's what they ordered. But I found out in Washington County, they ordered one number, but Ryder Graphics sent them a much higher number and then charged them for the higher number. So it'd be interesting to see the invoices on this one. We were unable to obtain any information explaining why the total number of ballots in existence represented by those sent out and remaining blank ballots, 471,239, should have be larger by several thousand than the number reported to have been ordered. Efforts to enforce, this is the law that we wanted them to, the former Secretary of State, Kate Brown, to follow so that we could hope to have a fair election for his Attorney General position that my lawyer, James Buechel, was running for at the time. He knew he was going to lose his election if we didn't force them to follow this law, ORS 254483. There was a special election to replace David Rue, and I was one of the 5 Republican candidates running in the primary. By letter dated October 9th, 2011, I called upon my fellow candidates to demand that the county clerks obey ORS 254483 and destroy unused ballots at 8 p.m. on election night. Excuse me. This did not happen. After the election, I made Public Records Act requests to Washington County, a true copy of which is attached here too as Exhibit 8, which produced the documents attached in Exhibit 9. One of the documents is an email from Oregon State Elections Director Steve Trout to Rich Hobenich, a county employee, in which he notes legislative efforts to change ORS 254483 and make a number of arguments to avoid obeying the plain language of the statute. Another is an email from Ms. Sia Lindstrom, Senior Deputy County Administrator, in which she tells the Board of Commissioners that the Secretary of State is advising them not to obey the statute to maintain security and accounting of the ballots. It is my understanding that Multnomah County has received similar advice from Mr. Trout and intends to follow it in the forthcoming election. Conclusion. In my opinion, the circumstances discussed above suggest misconduct aimed at utilizing blank ballots to true up the recount results with the reported precinct tallies. Whether or not such misconduct has in fact occurred, it is apparent that the ORS 254483 was intended to remove any opportunity for misconduct involving blank ballots by requiring that they be immediately destroyed. And the failure of the Secretary of State and the county elections officials to do so is causing continuing irreparable injury to me, Oregon's voters, candidates, and the public at large. Only an order from the court requiring compliance with ORS 254483 can avoid such injury. I declare under penalty of perjury under the laws of the state of Oregon that the forthcoming is true and correct. Executed on September 6th, 2012. Okay, well, not to belittle this anymore, in summary, in my own words, now that we've finished the document, this is the Michaels v. Brown, who's now Governor Brown of Oregon, 2012, when I sued the Secretary of State to try to force her to follow election law and get rid of the leftover unused ballots so they couldn't use them to rig all the elections. They later, after this, in 2013 or 2014, the state legislature, which was just packed with a bunch of Democrats that owed their position, I'm convinced, owed their position in the state legislature to this law not being followed because it allowed them to rig the elections. They voted to get rid of the statute entirely, so they no longer have to get rid of the unused ballots. So they have successfully rigged every statewide election except for once Gordon Smith got kicked out of his Senate position after just one, maybe 2 terms. I think just 1 term, which is really hard to do, to kick out a sitting U.S. Senator. But sure did happen under all vote by mail fraud. And so then in 2016, we were so thrilled because Dennis Richardson got elected to the key position of Secretary of State running the elections. And then he comes up with this brain cancer or brain tumor, I'm not sure which, and passed away a few months ago. So now the Fox are back guarding the hen house. And I hope that Donald Trump and the people that are working with him, Chris Kobach, and these people are going to expose this election fraud. And the only way we can have honest, fair elections is to have everybody vote only on election day unless they have an excuse to vote by mail. And on paper, and have each county precinct, each precinct that you vote at, the place that you vote at the end of the day, that precinct tallies up how many votes were cast in that by hand, by a bipartisan group of half Democrats, half Republicans, count them up and then seal them, and then very securely take them to the county elections to tally them all up. So if there's any problems, they have the paper ballots to do the recount. Then and only then will we have fair elections. Thank you. We ask God to please look over this whole situation and help shine the light of truth on all of this so that we can have fair and honest elections and get rid of some of this corruption that is infecting our country, Lord. And we thank you for everything that you've given us. I ask you to bless us in the future. This we pray in your precious Son, Jesus' name. Amen.